Welcome and thank you for joining us today for a Land Services SA webinar on Amendment to Strata Plans. This is a pre-recorded session with a live Q&A session at the end of the presentation. We ask you to kindly hold all of your questions until the allocated time where one of our subject matter experts will be able to assist. Land Services SA's subject matter experts assist in delivering our industry education program, utilising their years of experience and respected place in the industry. This webinar was prepared by Sandy Beaglehole. Sandy is one of our property examiners. She has over 40 years of experience in numerous positions within Land Services SA and has been a property examiner since 2014. During this webinar, we will be discussing strata plans and which application to use for an amendment to a strata plan, the A7 application and the AP6 application, and we'll walk through some examples of each of these applications. The legislation that oversees strata plans is the Strata Titles Act 1988, and for any amendment to be done to a strata plan, it has to be pursuant to a unanimous resolution of the Strata Corporation or pursuant to a court order. Either of these 2 points need to be addressed before an amendment to an existing strata would be accepted by our office. Section 12 is the section of the Strata Titles Act that requires a unanimous resolution, and Section 13 is in regards to a court order. Pursuant to Section 12, the unit boundaries and the registered interest are vesting in accordance with the plan, and therefore there is no need to show any vestings between the owners. And as regards to the consent form for the registered interest, it has the pre-printed statement on it, being adjusted in accordance with Section 12(5) and 5A of the Strata Titles Act 1988. There are two types of forms that can be used for an amendment to a strata plan. The Form A7 is used when there is an amendment to the unit boundaries and/or unit subsidiaries or common property. The Form A7 could also be used if there is a full allotment outside of the strata plan that is going to be merged with the strata plan, possibly to increase the size of one of the units. The Form AP6 is also used to amend the strata plan, but there will always be a deposited plan lodged as well. So, there are two examples of when the AP6 would be used, one of which is when there is land being removed from the strata plan. In this scenario, it is possible that there are 3 units and one of the unit holders wishes to remove their unit from this strata scheme to create a Torrens title separately. A new deposited plan is required to be lodged as well to depict the new boundaries of this allotment. The other example where an AP6 would be used is where portion of an allotment adjoining the strata scheme is added to the strata plan. In this scenario, a unit holder may be trying to make their unit bigger by merging portion of the adjoining land to their unit. So we will need an amended strata plan and a new deposited plan to show the balance of the adjoining land. We will first go through what is required to be produced with an A7 application. We would expect to see a copy of the minutes to the meeting and also a new unit entitlement sheet if the unit entitlements have changed. If they have not changed, then a letter from the valuer is required. This is an example of a strata plan that is going to be amended. The plan on the left shows the current strata plan that has been deposited in our office. On this plan, there are only 2 units and common property. The common property in this plan makes up the building and the driveway. In the original strata plan, the driveway, being the common property, was to the north of Unit 1. This driveway led to 2 garages at the rear of the property, one for Unit 1 and one for Unit 2. As you can see, the plan on the right has now been changed and the unit holders have agreed to change the boundaries between themselves and also the common property area. The part of the common property shown in the plan on the left, being the driveway, is going to be transferred to Unit 1 so they can increase their yard sub 1. Also, the garage for Unit 2, shown on the plan on the left, is now also going to be transferred to Unit 1. So with the amendment document, all three titles, being Unit 1, Unit 2, and Common Property, should be included into the A7 application. This is the application page in the Form A7 that needs to be lodged when you are amending the strata plan. As regards to the land description panel, only the certificate of titles that are affected by the amendment to the plan are to be shown, and these can be obtained from the new amended strata plan in the Other Titles Affected panel. The applicant will always be the Strata Corporation for an amendment to strata plan. You will need to strike through the inapplicable points shown in the operative panel. For point 1, you will most likely be striking through A to C and leaving point D. Point D shows the statement substituting the existing plan for that accompanying this application, which indicates that all new sheets for the strata plan will be lodged and will replace all of the existing pages. As the Strata Corporation will be the applicant, they need to execute under a common seal. They are not a company, but instead an association, and are covered by the Associations Act, which requires the common seal to be affixed. The affixing of the common seal should be done by at least 2 of the 3 officers of the corporation. The officers of the corporation are the presiding officer, treasurer, and secretary. One person can hold all 3 positions, but they will need to state this in the execution. Otherwise, the document may be referred out for correction. When preparing a seal, ensure that the wording is identical and correct in that Strata Corporation number 7838 Incorporated is shown in full. If the word number, abbreviated to NO. is missing, then a new seal will need to be prepared. For the mode of issue, only show the units and common property if they are affected by the amendment. In the previous example that was shown, units 1, 2, and common property were affected, and therefore we would need to reissue their titles and they would be shown in the mode of issue. Please ensure that the name is shown the same as registered on title. Otherwise, you'll be required to lodge a change of name as number 1 in the series. The shares need to be shown if there are any, and all registered interests will need to be shown on the estates or interest column. The certification at the bottom of the page is to be completed by the conveyancer or solicitor. Now we will be looking at the consent forms that are required. As discussed before, there will be no consent forms attached for the unit owners, as this was agreed at the meeting and they do not need to provide their written consent. The consent form is required to be completed by the registered interests of the units being amended. The registered interests include mortgages and leases, for example. The pre-printed clause in the middle column is to cover the automatic adjustment of the registered interests. The other unit owners who are not affected by the amendment to the strata plan but have their unit entitlements changing due to this amendment do not need to consent as they were at the meeting and are aware of the changes to the new unit entitlements. Their registered interests will still need to consent as they were not present at the meeting. Also, the consent is required from the registered proprietor of any title affected by the variation or extinguishment of an easement. In summary, for the Form A7, ensure that only the units or common property that are affected by the amendment are shown in the mode of issue. There will be no vestings or consent forms from the owners. Only their registered interests will be consenting to the amendments and change to unit entitlements if there are any changes. Consent will be required from the registered proprietors of any land that is affected by a variation or extinguishment of an easement or an encroachment. The other form that is used for an amendment to strata plan is an AP6, and in this scenario, there is a new deposited plan that is required to be lodged as well. The deposited plan is used to show the balance of an allotment where a portion of the adjoining land has been merged with the strata scheme, or if their land is being removed from the strata scheme, and this needs to be re-identified on a new deposited plan with a new allotment number. In this basic example, you can see that in the diagram on the left that there were 4 units and common property. Unit 3 wants to be removed from the strata scheme and just have a torrens title. So to achieve this, the surveyor will need to lodge 2 plans, a new deposited plan and a new amended strata plan. The new deposited plan would look like the plan showed in the middle, which just shows the new allotment 32. This will now be a torrens title and will be removed from the scheme. As regards to the new amended strata plan, it would look like the plan on the right, which will just show the remaining units, being units 1, 2, 4, and the common property. An AP6 application will require the copy of the minutes to the meeting to be produced as part of the lodgement, and also a new unit entitlement sheet if it is determined that the unit entitlements are changing. If this is not the case and the unit entitlements are not changing, then a letter from the valuer confirming this will also be required. The application page for the AP6 requires both the strata plan and the deposited plan numbers to be inserted at the top of the page with their relevant development numbers. Only show the titles from the strata plan that are involved with the amendment, and if there is land outside of the strata scheme merging with the strata plan, then this title will also need to be included. As regards to the applicant panel, it will be the strata corporation making the application on behalf of the unit owners and the registered proprietor of any outside land that is merging with the strata plan. With an AP6, the vestings need to be shown in the details of transaction panel. The vestings between the applicants and the unit holders will need to be shown here and on any relevant consent forms that are attached. If there are any vestings between unit holders who are not an applicant, then the vestings need to be shown in their consent forms only. Also, if there are any easements being created, varied, or extinguished, then this will need to be stated in this panel as well. Regarding the easement schedule, you will need to delete the inapplicable, and if there is no new short or long form easements being created in the new plans, then these 2 statements should both be struck through. An AP6 requires the consent of the unit owners that are affected by the amendment and their registered interests. If there is land outside of the strata scheme being added to the strata scheme, then the registered interests of that land are to be included. The consent of the registered proprietor of any land outside the strata scheme and deposited plan that may be affected by an easement or encroachment will need to consent. Also, the consent of the registered proprietor and registered interest of any unit where their entitlement is going to change is required. In summary, for the Form AP6, there will always be an amended strata plan and a new deposited plan lodged. The applicants will be the Strata Corporation and the registered proprietors of the land outside of the strata scheme if there is land merging into the strata scheme from the outside. Ensure that only the units or common property that are affected and the new allotment created in the deposited plan is shown in the mode of issue. Consent will be required from the registered proprietors of any land that is affected by a variation or extinguishment of easement or an encroachment. The recording of this webinar is available to watch from our Industry Education Hub library, where you can also find a range of educational and support materials to assist you in your day-to-day work. That concludes the recorded webinar section. Thank you for listening. Please remain online for the live Q&A session with our subject matter expert.